Hello everybody. Today we will be starting the solution of the CBSE published sample paper for class 10 for the term 1 for the session 2021 and 22. As you can see that the paper is divided into 3 sections. The first section says that you will be provided with 24 questions out of which you have to attempt only 20. Any 20 questions can be attempted from section A. From section B, out of 24 again, you will have to attempt any 20 questions. And the third section, that is section C, out of 12 questions, you would have to attempt any 10 questions. So total questions that any child is attempting is 50. And as we know that the full marks for this paper is 40. And there is a point that says that all questions carry equal marks. So for each question, if we divide 50 questions out of 40 marks, we see that each question carries 0.8 mark, right? And there is no negative marking for any of the answers. So let's proceed and solve the chemistry part of this paper. The first question says, from section A, that if we take 5 ml of a lead nitrate solution in a beaker and approximately add 4 ml of potassium iodide, what would be the observation? So let's write down the equation. Lead nitrate, when treated with potassium iodide, it undergoes a double displacement reaction and gives us PbI2 plus KNO3, right? Now this lead iodide salt which is formed, it is insoluble and forms a yellow color precipitate. So now we look for the options. The solution turns red, a yellow precipitate is formed, a white precipitate is formed, or the reaction mixture becomes hot. So when we write the reaction and we find that yellow precipitate is the most suitable option, and hence our correct answer will be a yellow precipitate is formed. A second question. Second question shows us an activity-based experiment which demonstrates that they have taken some zinc granules in this test tube, and through the delivery tube we see a gas is coming out. So the zinc granules is reacting with an acid that is being passed into this thistle funnel. The acid is dilute sulfuric acid. To write the reaction, zinc granules when treated with dilute sulfuric acid, the reaction would be zinc sulfate and hydrogen gas is evolved. So they wanted us to identify gas A which is evolved in this truck. And the gas that is evolved is a hydrogen gas. So option B is the correct answer. We proceed with the next question, that is question number 3. It shows a flow chart, and the flow chart depicts a metal being treated with dilute HCl. So whenever we have a metal treated with dilute HCl, we know that metal chloride is formed, which is the metal salt, and hydrogen gas is evolved. So a metal chloride is formed along with hydrogen gas. I'm not writing the valency of the metal M. I'm just writing that a salt is formed along with the evolution of hydrogen gas. So we need to see that which of the following two combinations are correct. That is combination in the two columns, metal and the gas evolved, right? So do we see that any gas is evolved? Yes. So we look for the options 1, 2, 3 and 4. Option number 1, 2 and 4 shows that gas is evolved. Definitely a gas is evolved. So option 3 cannot be my correct option. Now when we look for the first column which depicts the metal, we have to understand that which metal is capable of displacing hydrogen from this acid. Now if we remember the reactivity series, any element which is placed above hydrogen will be able to displace hydrogen from the acid. So copper. Being low in the activity series cannot displace hydrogen gas. So this cannot be the option. Iron, being more reactive than hydrogen in the activity series, will displace the hydrogen gas. So option 2 is correct. And zinc, also being a more reactive element or a metal, will displace. So our correct combination is option 2 and option 4, which is option D, right? Next, we move to the next question, which says, which of the following correctly represents a balanced chemical equation? So when we have the idea of balancing, we would be able to solve this very easily. So we see that iron reacts with 4H2O to give Fe3O4. So when we count the number of atoms on the left hand side and on the right hand side, we see that there is only one iron and 3 iron on the right hand side. So this cannot be the correct option because iron is not balanced. We move to the next option. We see there are 3 iron here. Yes, 3 iron is on the right hand side as well. Hydrogen is 8, hydrogen is 8, oxygen is 4, oxygen is 4. This seems to be the correct option. And if we further check C and D, we find that iron is balanced in C. Hydrogen is 2, but oxygen is not balanced because on the right hand side there are 4 atoms of oxygen and the left side has 1 atom only. So C is not balanced. Let us complete with D. There is 3 iron atoms on both the sides. There is 8 hydrogen atom on the left hand side but only 2. So D is also not balanced. The correct answer is B. Question number 5. Question number 5 shows a neutralization reaction. It says that when an acid reacts with an alkali or a water-soluble base, it gives us salt and water. The pH of the solution changes when we add excess acid to an alkali, right? So when an acid is treated with a base, we get salt and water as the only product. This is the definition for neutralization reaction. Now, the question is, which letter denotes the area of the graph where both acid and salts are present? When we look at the graph, we see that the y-axis carries the pH and the volume of the acid added is placed along the x-axis. Now, when they're saying that the beaker should contain acid as well as salt, since it contains acid, the pH cannot be more than 7, right? As per the pH scale. So region A, region B and region C cannot be my option because they want the acid and salt to be present. Since acid has a pH which is less than 7, so the region that is correct is option D. So option D would be the correct option. Question number 6 says that there is a reaction between copper sulfate and iron. It undergoes a single displacement reaction to give me a reddish deposition of copper and ferrous sulfate. We have to identify the substance which is getting oxidized and the reducing agent. Okay, so what is oxidation? Oxidation is a process which involves the addition of oxygen. Okay, so we find out that iron on the left hand side does not contain any oxygen, but on the right hand side it changes to ferrous sulfate. So iron is a substance that adds oxygen to itself and changes to ferrous sulfate. So iron is the metal which gets oxidized. So option A and option B contains iron as a substance oxidized. So we are sure that C and D cannot be the correct option. Now, what about the reducing agent? We've learned that any substance that undergoes oxidation, the substance that undergoes oxidation is termed as the reducing agent, and the substance that undergoes reduction is termed as the oxidizing agent. So if iron is getting oxidized, then iron itself is the reducing agent. So where or which option carries this answer? It is option A. So option A is substance oxidized is iron and the reducing agent is iron itself. Number 7. The chemical reaction between copper and oxygen can be categorized as copper when oxidized with oxygen gives us CuO. Since oxidation is not there in the option, we find that A and B combine together to give us AB. This generalization is therefore a combination reaction. So option C is the correct option. Next, which of the given options correctly represents the parent acid and base of calcium carbonate? This means that the salt calcium carbonate has been derived from which acid and which base. We know that the metallic part of any salt is basically contributed by a base and the non-metallic part is contributed by an acid. So this comes from the base, calcium is coming from the base and carbonate comes from the acidic part. So when we have to find out the parent acid and the base could be calcium hydroxide. That means hydroxide containing compounds are bases, and the acid that contains CO3 could be H2CO3. When both of them combine together, they give us calcium carbonate as the salt. So the option that carries this acid and base would be option B. H2CO3 is the parent acid and calcium hydroxide is the parent base. Next, how will you protect yourself from the heat generated while diluting a concentrated acid? This is a must point to be noted while we are working in any lab. Adding water to a concentrated acid is a highly exothermic reaction. So we need to be very careful. Adding water to acid will cause explosion. By adding acid to water with constant stirring would be the best or the most correct way. Adding acid to water with constant stirring would be the best way to protect ourselves while we are diluting any concentrated acid. Next, why is it important to balance a skeletal chemical equation? Why do we balance an equation is probably because we want the number of atoms on both sides, that is the total number of atoms on the reactant side and the total number of all the atoms in the product side should be same. That means the law of conservation of mass has to be conserved. We cannot create mass, neither we can destroy mass. On both the sides, it has to be exactly the same. After completing the chemistry portion of section A, we proceed to the section B part. The section B also says that out of 24 questions, we will have to attempt any 20 questions, and if we answer more than 20 questions, we would be marked only upon the first attempted 20 questions and not more. The question says, limestone, when it is heated, it gives us a substance X and the gas called carbon dioxide is evolved. The chemical formula of limestone is calcium carbonate, which is CaCO3. When it is heated, it gives us calcium oxide and carbon dioxide gas. They are further heating calcium, or they are further diluting this calcium oxide with the presence of water to give us slaked lime, that is calcium hydroxide. The question continues, identify the correct option from the table that represents the type of reaction occurring in step 1 and 2. As we note that in step 1, heat is given to the substance, and in step 2, along with calcium hydroxide, heat is evolved. So step 2 happens to be an exothermic reaction, and because we are giving heat to calcium carbonate, the system absorbs heat and therefore it is an endothermic process. So the option that carries step 1 as endothermic and step 2 as exothermic would be option C. The first step is endothermic and the second step is exothermic. Next, in which year is a concentration of hydrogen ion the highest? And from the graph I see that pH value is plotted against the years. So as we have this concept that the formula of pH is given as minus log concentration of H plus ion. So more the concentration of H plus ion, the value of the pH would be low. So they're asking for the concentration of hydrogen ion highest. That means the pH should be lowest. So when we analyze the graph, we find that the pH value takes a dip or it is a minimum in the year 2002. So pH having minimum value in 2002 would have the highest concentration of H plus ion. So option A, 2002 would be the correct answer. The diagram, the next question shows a diagram which depicts a reaction between metal and a dilute acid. What is the diagram? The diagram shows 4 test tubes A, B, C and D, and we find that there's zinc reacting with dilute HCl in the first, magnesium with dilute HCl in the second, iron with dilute HCl in the third, and copper with dilute HCl in the fourth. The question says, what is the reason for the different behavior of magnesium in test tube B? We find that magnesium is floating in test tube B. What could be the possible reason? Is magnesium lighter element than dilute HCl? Magnesium reacts with dilute HCl to produce hydrogen gas and it helps in floating. It reacts with dilute HCl to produce N2 gas and helps in floating. Or it reacts with dilute HCl to produce CO2 gas that helps in floating. For this, we need to note the reaction. Magnesium, when treated with dilute HCl, it gives us MgCl2 plus hydrogen gas is evolved. Magnesium, being more reactive than hydrogen in the activity series, can liberate hydrogen gas. So the correct option would be option B, where it reacts with HCl to produce H2, and when the hydrogen gas sticks to the surface of the metal, magnesium metal, it helps the metal to float. Next question. It says they have supplied us with 4 different substances where the melting point has also been provided. Now, these 4 substances conduct electricity in solid and liquid or aqueous state. So, the question is, identify the ionic compound from the given substances. For this, the characteristic of ionic compound should be recapitulated. First, it is a good conductor of electricity. Yes, but ionic compounds conduct electricity only in the molten or the aqueous state. And the second point, they have high melting point. So let us look for the substances that have high melting point. A cannot be regarded as a substance with high melting point, so A could not be the correct answer. It could either be B, C or D that has high melting point. It is in the range of 1200, 1800 and 1100. Now the substance that conducts electricity only in the molten or aqueous state would be good. That is option B and C. Because in the liquid and aqueous state, option D is a poor conductor of electricity, so it cannot be an ionic compound. To be an ionic compound, you have to have or conduct electricity in the liquid or the aqueous state. So option B would be the correct option. Next. Vinay observed that the stain of the curry on the white shirt becomes reddish brown when the soap was scrubbed on it, but it turns yellow again when the shirt is washed with plenty of water. What could be the reason for his observation? The soap is acidic in nature. The soap is basic in nature. Yes, the soap is basic in nature. Turmeric is a natural indicator which gives a reddish tinge in bases, or turmeric is a natural indicator which gives a reddish tinge in acids. Because we know that he used soap, and soap is a base and the stain of curry contains turmeric, so the correct option would be turmeric is a natural indicator which gives the reddish color in bases. So option 2 and 3, which is present in option number B. Next. The question is, which of the following setups the bulb would glow? We are noting that the sample paper has provided a lot of questions from the activity section. So it is very, very essential for each and every student to go through the activities of the chapters very well. We see that the setup is taken and a bulb is connected to it and observed if the bulb is glowing or not. The various solutions taken are dilute HCl solution, a sugar solution, alcohol in water, and lime water. They wanted to know that in which setup would the bulb glow, which setup the bulb will glow. We notice that for the bulb to glow, we need to have current, and for that, free ions is responsible for the conduction of electricity. So free ions is possible in which of the following solution? Dilute HCl would give me H plus and Cl minus ions. So yes, it will help in the conduction of electricity. Sugar solution is a non-electrolyte. So sugar being a non-electrolyte does not dissociate into ions. So it will not conduct electricity. Next, alcohol is an organic solvent. It will also not dissociate. It will not conduct electricity. And the last option is lime water, which is nothing but calcium hydroxide. It also dissociates into Ca2 plus and 2OH minus ions. So ions are. So the correct option for the bulb to glow would be in beaker 4 and in beaker 1. So the answer would be 1 and 4, which is option B. Next we come to another set of questions where the category is little different. It carries assertion and reason as the two statements. We have to study both the statements of assertion and reason and choose the correct option among these four. So option A says that both assertion and reason are true, and assertion and the reason is a correct explanation for the assertion statement. Option B says A and R are true, but R is not the correct explanation of assertion. C says A is true, but R is false. And option D is A is false, but R is true. So it is very important that we read both the statements individually first and then find the best possible option. So the first question, number 31, says, fresh milk in which the baking soda is added takes a longer time to set as curd. So we need to think whether this particular statement is correct or not. Now, fresh milk, when it changes to curd, the pH level goes down. However, when baking soda is added, it takes a little longer time to set as curd because baking soda being a base, it helps to pull up the pH level. And when it changes into curd, it slightly changes acidic because of the formation of lactic acid into it. So assertion is a correct statement. Now, the reason says because baking soda decreases the pH of the fresh milk to below 6. No, baking soda will not decrease the pH of the fresh milk. Baking soda is a base and it rather helps to increase the pH of the fresh milk. So the reason is a wrong statement in itself. So the option we would choose would be A is true, but R is false. That is option C would be the correct answer. The next question is, decomposition of vegetable matter into compost is an endothermic reaction. No, it is an exothermic reaction. So assertion is a wrong statement. Now let us read the reason. It says the decomposition reaction involves breakage of a single reactant into simpler products. Yes, AB being a reactant, it decomposes into A and B. So the reason is a correct statement. Assertion is wrong, but reason is correct. So it should be option D. A is false, but R is true. Next. Question 35 says that the table shows the reaction of few elements with the acids and bases and it evolves hydrogen gas. So these elements, 4 elements A, B, C, D, when treated with acid and a base, it releases hydrogen gas. The question that they are asking is which of the following is an amphoteric oxide? The definition of amphoteric oxide is such that they both with acid, react both with acid as well as base to give salt and water. So, out of this table, when we analyze, we see the only metal or the metals that react both with acids and bases would be metal B or the element B and D. Otherwise, we see that A does not react with A acid as well as base, and C does not react with a base, so they cannot be amphoteric oxide. So B and D is present in option number D. Next, question 48 says that few metals' physical properties have been provided, which is being manufactured by a cable manufacturing unit or a company which is manufacturing wires. They have chosen WXYZ. Now they want to discard any of the following. So, which of the above elements was discarded by the company? Now, to use those cables or the wires, the properties which are desirable would be, I think, more than malleability, ductile. Being able to draw into thin wires would be more preferred or required. It has to be a good electrical conductor, that is, conductivity should be good, and it should have a high melting point. We do not want the wires to get heated in the heat and then start melting. So the desirable qualities would be these. So which of the following metals have a melting point which is high in the range? W and Z is having high melting point, but Z does not have a good electrical conductivity, so Z is not there. But Z has electrical conductivity, W has good electrical conductivity as well as X and Y, but Z does not have. So we are left with W. Now, ductile nature is provided by W again and Z also. They are ductile in nature. Okay, so the metals that would be discarded and not needed at all would be X and Y, because their melting point is very low, they would be melting very soon. And because Z does not conduct electricity only, so what would we do if they have high melting point? So discarded metals would be X, Y, and Z. We see that W fulfills all the necessary quality, so W could be accepted. And discarded would be X, Y, and Z. That is option B. Section C says that there are total 12 questions in this section, out of which we have to attempt any 10 from this. The first attempted 10 questions would be taken up for evaluation. It is a paragraph-based question. It is the salt story. When we read the story, we find that the salt pans in Marakanam, a port in 120 km from China, is the third largest producer of salt in Tamil Nadu. Separation of the salt from water is a very laborious process, and the salt obtained as a raw material is used for manufacturing various sodium compounds, one of them being sodium hydrogen carbonate, which is NaHCO3, used in baking process, also as antacid and soda acid fire extinguisher. We find that various compounds has been obtained when 1 liter of seawater was evaporated. So when we analyze, we see that the various compounds obtained is sodium chloride, magnesium chloride, magnesium sulfate, and calcium carbonate. The respective amounts have been given in gram. The total amount of salt obtained was 45 gram. Let us look at the questions. Which compound in the table salt would release carbon dioxide? Now, it could be answered from this aspect also, that when acids are treated with metal carbonates, we see that carbon dioxide gas is evolved. So carbon dioxide would be evolved only if the salt contains carbonate. So let us look at the options. NaCl cannot be the option because it does not contain carbonate nor calcium sulfate. So we have calcium carbonate that carries the carbonate radical and that can liberate carbon dioxide gas. Magnesium sulfate also cannot liberate carbon dioxide gas. So the correct option is C. Now, the next question is how many gram of magnesium sulfate is present in 135 gram of solid left by evaporation of seawater? Let us go back to the data and see that when 45 gram of the solid total salt was heated, magnesium sulfate was 6 gram that was obtained. 6 gram of magnesium sulfate was obtained. What do they want? 135 gram. So when 45 gram was evaporated, we saw 6 gram of MgSO4. So when 135 gram is evaporated, we will get 6 by 45 into 135. That is 18 gram of MgSO4 would be left behind as magnesium sulfate. Next, what is the saturated solution of sodium chloride called? It is brine solution. Next, what is the pH of an acid which is formed in the formation of common salt? So let us find out that sodium chloride, that is common salt, is obtained from which parent acid and which parent base. As we discussed, the first part comes from the base and the second part comes from the acid. So the base would be NaOH and the acid would be HCl. So we need to find out what would be the corresponding pH of this acid. 1 to 3, yes, it could be. 6 to 8, no, because otherwise it would not be that acidic. 8 to 10 happens to be a base and 11 to 13 is also a base. So the correct option is A because the pH of HCl lies in that range. So with this we finish the chemistry portion of our class 10 science CBSE sample paper for term 1. We need to practice more and more better questions and help us achieve better marks in our term 1 board exams. Thank you.